If you like listening to Inglorious Treksperts, you'll love watching us.
Really?
How?
I guess you will. But how can one do that, Mark?
Now you can download the free Electric Now app featuring video podcasts of The Inglorious Treksperts, The 430 Movie, Best Movies Never Made, and tons of free TV, movies, and more.
You're saying it's all free? All free?
I'm saying it's free.
100% free.
100%. There's no Patreon. There's no premium fees. There's no electronic frontier.
Well, there's no excuse not to get it then.
There's no excuse not to. That's what I'm saying. So download the Electric Now app today and start watching us right now.
You must learn to listen to the Rebel and the Rogue, or you will not be allowed to come with me to Alderaan.
If you're a fan of the 430 Movie, you'll love Best Movies Never Made, hosted by myself, Josh Miller.
And Steven Scarlatta,
where we explore some of the greatest movies never made, like E.T. 2,
Johnny Quest,
Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian,
and Halloween 3D.
New episodes available every other Monday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, and if you're a fan of the only gentleman secret agent with a license to kill and thrill, you should pick up my new James Bond oral history, Nobody Does It Better, available now in hardcover, audio, and digital, wherever books are sold.
Do you expect me to read?
No, I expect you to buy it. Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is Darren Doctorman, and we are the Inglorious
Treksperts. 8 hours of our 101 greatest sci-fi episodes ever. 8 hours was not enough for you. We got another. We can't quit you, baby. And I got Rob Burnett from the Burnettwork and Ashley Miller from Ashley Millerland back to talk.
Miller World.
Miller World, yeah, exactly. Not to be confused with Millar World.
Miller's Outpost.
Well, we promised we would get back to you with some of the our listeners' comments about your favorite. Some excoriating us for not mentioning your favorite episodes. Others praising us. You would have. And then also we talked to some of your favorite guests from the last year on the show and got their picks as well. And I just have to say it was very gratifying. You know, people seem to really enjoy that. You know, we're amazed anyone listened to it, to be honest, because 8 hours, Jesus, we didn't even want to talk for 8 hours, let alone listen to it for 8 hours.
It's the height of hubris.
But we thought we could do it. So,
which is about yay big.
And it really, it's really it's very interesting, and it's very interesting to see the feedback. And I really thought that perhaps a lot of the stuff we talked about people would not have been familiar with, but apparently we have an audience that is almost as old as we are, because people are all too familiar with a lot of these other shows, and it definitely seemed like it struck a note both nostalgically, but also I think one of the most gratifying thing was seeing some of the responses like, I'm not familiar with the show, I should check it out. Like somebody was responding to Rob talking about UFO and was saying, oh, I got to check out the show. And apparently they loved it. So that's great. So before we talk about some of our favorite, the guests, here's just a few things from Facebook and Twitter that people have talked about. Danny Coyle said he would have liked to have seen more of The Prisoner, and he pointed out his episode would have been Chimes of Big Ben, the second episode.
If you go by that broadcast order, but yeah, right. I mean, I think Many Happy Returns does Chimes of Big Ben better and more intriguing.
I think you're right.
But look, and I always hated the fact that in our broadcast order that we were given Chimes of Big Ben is the second episode, which gives away a lot, but it's a good episode.
Yeah. He also said not a big fan and Not Now and Again, Wasn't a big fan of Now and Again, which was when I asked these.
Well, then his opinions are disqualified.
Okay, on Twitter, Not Making Claims it suggested we were remiss not to include The Day After and Special Bulletin. And I will say I came very close to making a case to this esteemed panel to include Special Bulletin.
Have taken over. All that remains now is for the NEST team to begin disarming the bomb. Steve.
John, the NEST team is now approaching the ship. They're going inside the ship now.
What we're seeing now are members of the Nuclear Emergency Search Team. This is a highly classified group. They've been organized, I think, 10 years or so. And they're in a constant state of preparedness to deal with anything concerning nuclear contamination. Considering it's now just before 5, and the bomb, as far as we know, is set to go off at 6. They certainly have their work cut out for them.
Which I thought was a wonderful MOW. It was like Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, where basically it was about a nuclear terrorist act in, I think, Maryland, right? On a boat in Maryland or something. Really terrific NBC MOW.
Yeah, movie of the week,
told as though it was a newscast. You know, the only problem with the newscast was about every 12 seconds they said, "This is not a real newscast.
Right.
This is a movie of the week," because they did not want to have one of those War of the Worlds things.
You know what? I remember that show, and my problem with it was that all the newscasters were so actory that it pulled me out of the whole thing. Not once would I believe it was ever a real newscast.
That's because Howard K. Smith wasn't on it.
That's correct. Yeah. You know,
remember
with Howard K. Smith warning about the gas leak at Devil's Tower? Absolutely.
And he was also in V.
That's correct.
He was,
and gave it the patina of truthfulness, much like Wolf Blitzer and Crimson Tide made me believe.
I don't like that image of Howard K. Smith giving the patina of truthfulness to anything.
I'll give you a patina of truthfulness.
I believe there was a rebellion in the Caucasus. But anyway, that was just me. Then The Day After, which I have to say, Nick Meyer, previous guest of the show. We all love Nick. I think this is a very important TV movie. Not sure I would put it on our list.
I really don't think either side wants to be the first to use a nuclear device.
It's not a question of who, but where.
East Germany sealed off the borders to West Berlin.
It's not going to happen. 4 principal West German access corridors.
People are crazy, but not that crazy.
I don't believe this is happening.
We have a massive attack against the U.S. at this time. ICBMs. Over 300 missiles inbound now.
Either we fired first and they're going to try to hit what's left. But they fired first and we just got our missiles out of the ground in time.
This is not an exercise.
Second takes you beyond imagining, beyond tomorrow, and into the day after.
Yeah. I first of all, you know, if part of the measure of like whether it goes on the list is, did it bring me joy? Well, I mean, at number 92, it's Secret of Bigfoot, and at number 91, it's The Day After. What fucking podcast is this? I mean, cool.
You know, it's no Flight of the War Witch. Let's be honest.
But what is?
You know, the thing about Day
Flight of the War Witch.
Very famously, Ronald Reagan said, you know, I don't remember the exact quote, but wow, these nuclear weapons are really bad, or whatever it was that made him take, you know, sorry. A lot of people feel that it was Day After that prompted him to address nuclear proliferation more seriously, because he realized how so in that sense, it is the most important movie, the number one movie, you know, on our list. But as you said, in terms of enjoyment factor, in terms of drama, in terms of it's just not something that
pure enjoyableness.
Pure enjoyable.
I'm not like every year with the kids, I want to rewatch The Day After.
Special Bulletin was more fun to watch.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like a terrorist thing. I mean, The Day After was just a monumental. You might as well throw Threads on there.
Yeah,
because there's a feel good special if there ever was one. Although the
so I
Blu-ray is nice.
We're all in agreement. There's also, I guess, a new documentary about the making of The Day After and its impact, which I'm curious to see. I remember a bunch of footage which was deemed too explicit was cut from Day After, because I know the network was worried about that it was just too graphic, that they did not want to depict nuclear Armageddon too accurately.
I wonder if the making of the Day After documentary covers all 40 years of the Cold War.
I don't know.
Because that contributed the most to it, I think.
Yeah.
It may have had something to do with it.
One of our listeners, Overnight Joe, who's active on the Twitter, as they say, suggested the Invaders pilot episode. Of course, we're all fans of Roy Finnis here on the show. The Invaders pilot. What do you think? It should have been on our list. Was that an omission?
I think it might have been. I was thinking about that. It's a series that I tend to forget, but I like the series a lot. And also, I've built 6 different versions of the flying saucer model kits of it since I was a kid. And it's one of those series that I just forget. I was thinking about, I put Outer Limits, I put The Prisoner, I put UFO. I was remiss. I should have brought up in The Invaders.
The Invaders. Alien beings from a dying planet. Their destination, the Earth. Their purpose, to make it their world. David Vincent has seen them. For him, it began one lost night on a lonely country road looking for a shortcut that he never found. It began with a closed, deserted diner and a man too long without sleep to continue his journey. It began with the landing of a craft from another galaxy. Now, David Vincent knows that the invaders are here, that they have taken human form. Somehow he must convince a disbelieving world that the nightmare has already begun.
Well, we all should.
How high? Yeah, how high do you think we should have put this on the list? The Invaders pilot. What do you think?
100 to 75, probably, because it just the problem that I didn't think about it means that it doesn't
make an
rank.
impression.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it does. I mean, I think that's what a lot of what I think our list is. Does it have a lasting pop culture imprint or footprint on us?
Or Pamela Helmsley.
Right.
Yes.
And as cool as The Invaders was, the problem is that they're not really memorable as individual episodes. They're all kind of the same episode over and over and over again.
Yeah. And it was hard to see.
The premise is cool. The premise is really interesting, and it's told well, but it's not. It doesn't have that, like you said, that lasting effect on you.
Yeah, I remember the flying saucer more than I remember the episodes themselves.
Yeah, we all had that flying saucer, that model kit.
Yeah,
for sure. I had that model kit long before I ever saw the pilot.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
But I mean, again, to repeat to the audience, the list was us all sort of confabbing, and we worked together, to nominate and then also determine where on the list episodes would go. Obviously, we're in agreement about everything, but depending on how adamant someone was, it was more likely to end up on the list. And then we worked together to sort of determine the order in which these films. And I think one of the most
how many episodes of Space 1999 to include,
right? Which would be almost all of them.
Yeah, I think that came as a pleasant surprise, surprisingly, to a lot of people, that Space 1999 was so well represented. There's a lot of love for Space 1999 out there, and I think we've done a great job of stoking the flames. Because it's
at
not
least the
something.
first season.
Well, look, one episode we didn't talk about, which I used to think was a great episode until I rewatched it recently, was Bringers of Wonder. I used to love that. And I thought, it's a 2-part episode. It's like the menagerie of Star Trek, of Space 1999, right? And it's not. It's really bad.
I mean, the idea behind it is great, and there's a great practical monster, but no.
There's only,
it's no Dragon's Domain.
It's not. But I think I got confused because I really love that Destination Moonbase Alpha key art that they used for the release of when they cut it into a movie, and that was so hot. But the episode doesn't live up to the promise of the one sheet.
No.
Okay. So Patrick Waltz had said he was very excited to see how many anthology series we had represented, and he pointed out there were a few other good ones including Ghost Stories and the Ray Bradbury Theater. Yeah.
I mean, those are both good. I mean, it's stuff like Thriller. We didn't have any episodes of Thriller.
No, we didn't have any Thriller.
And I think again, it's because
no Billie Jean,
who is not my lover.
But I just think a lot of it was what we were shaped by.
Right.
Yeah.
We personally, I think the list was very, very subjective as opposed to being an objective list like the
absolutely. This is our list.
That's right.
It's not it's what influenced us and what we remember.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guarantee you, we didn't go looking up these things on the internet. We pulled them out from our memory because
Steve Melching isn't on this show.
That's right. Who has the list of everything? Yeah. I mean, if I were going to sit and think about that in terms of the anthology shows, I mean, I could have pulled things from the CBS Twilight Zone, the first, remake of the Twilight Zone, like Shadow Man or Paladin of the Lost Hour. There's some really great
Pilgrim
episodes.
Soul.
Right. Or like, what was the one where like the professor tells the devil to go to hell? Like they're just Get Lost, which is great. I mean, there's so many things, but
that's not the name of the episode, but the it's called he's got the t-shirts. Let's do Damnation that change all the time.
Yeah.
The devil.
Yeah.
And conversely, I would have pitched the Fantasy Island with Roddy McDowell's The Devil, but it didn't quite make 101. Maybe 150. Could have been 150. Maybe
the top 200 episodes, like a 24-hour podcast.
Yeah. Well, and also, I felt bad after we recorded that we didn't pick any episodes of Stargate. Like,
I don't think that.
There's 10. Well, there's 10, but a lot of people.
I
know, but a lot. That's because we haven't watched it. And I'll say something.
Yeah, a lot of people like it, but we aren't a lot of people.
That's true.
Yeah,
look, we're putting it through our prism, our filter, and I know, Rob, you recently discovered it and are enjoying it, but
I wouldn't. So far, I wouldn't. From what I've watched, and I haven't watched that many, but I wouldn't. It's not. It's fun to watch, but there's no episodes that made me go, "Oh my god, this has to go on a list."
Yeah, I mean, I will say that
it's very Canadian. It's nice, and then you forget about it.
Yes, I mean, and there are people who are diehard Stargate fans who love it. And I know, like, there are people at home who are listening who are thinking, "My God, I'm never going to listen to this show again because how dare they?" But I will say that, where the hell is? I had one of our guests list, which had Stargate on here, but I seem to have misplaced it. He was actually very surprised by the fact that we did not have Stargate. I got Steve Melching's picks here, but got other people's picks. But where is?
I bet you it wasn't Pete Devlin's picks.
No, it definitely wasn't. It was. Well, okay. I'll look for it when we're on break. Okay, so
when are we on break? We're on break after the episode.
We'll come back to that.
All right.
So, I would also say there are episodes of the Outer Limits revival that potentially could have made it to Trial by Fire, which was it Trial by Fire?
I never remember the names of any.
The Leonard Nimoy remake of iRobot,
right?
Where he played the opposite role that he had played in the original Twilight Zone, and Adam Nimoy, I believe, directed that one. But I think that there are a couple of shows, and Karen Walker wanted to just reiterate that she was so thrilled to see Star Trek was well represented. Outer Limits, which look, a notable omission, which I think we could all argue should have been on there, was Demon with a Glass Hand.
Sure.
But I mean, sometimes there's episodes of shows that aren't mentioned on every single other list that's ever been done when they talk about the Outer Limits.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, yes, Demon with a Glass Hand is really, really good.
But part of this is us shining a light on those that aren't always on the list.
Right, which I think is a big part of like the survivors, for instance, being on our list, whereas maybe other like things like the Inner Light or whatever aren't on there, because we are trying to spotlight maybe some underrepresented we're trying to bring a little diversity to the list.
Yeah, it's like, look, I think we all get delighted talking about the survivors, and what the hell else do we have to say about the fucking Inner Light? It's like, and for an hour, everybody gets depressed and they cry when Picard plays the flute. All right, number 82.
Well, and I think we've also talked. Yeah, we also
my favorite
covered
episode that doesn't have the other cast members in it.
We've talked about it in our overrated Star Trek episodes. So
that's right.
Why would we revisit it? But look, I'm sure for some people that was disappointing that was not represented.
I look forward to listening to it on their podcasts.
Exactly. So here is I'm going to the videotape. This is from actually Tom Vitale, who was a guest on our episode where he was a former executive at the Sci-Fi Channel, and he talked about on our episodes about the Sci-Fi Channel airing the original Star Trek and the wraparound. So he had mentioned the Stargate Atlantis pilot. Tom's comment was, I believe this was the highest rated episode of any original 1 hour series on Sci-Fi ever. It was a 2 hour episode and it was very, very, very good. So that was one Stargate that he pointed out. He also had The Day After on his list. Yes, it's a TV movie and not an episode, but it was impactful. In fact, people think it changed government policy towards the Soviet Union and influenced how viewers viewed the Cold War. This was more than an important piece of science fiction. It was an important event in the history of television. So those are some of Tom's picks. We'll get back to more of Tom's picks later, but I wanted to mention that. Rick Carter mentioned Power Play from the 1970s. I was delighted to see he mentioned The Invisible Man because for those of us who remember
with David McCallum.
With Dave McCallum, not to be confused with Gemini Man with Ben Murphy.
Ben Murphy and his wristwatch.
I kind of like Gemini Man, but of course I was like 5 at the time. So what do I know?
Invisible Man was terrible. And of course, we're not talking about the one from first run syndication in the 80s, 90s. We're talking about the Invisible Man with
NBC in the mid 70s, 76, I think, or 77.
I don't know what it was about, the Bermuda Triangle and invisible people, but these were obviously an obsession. Because you had the Invisible Man and then Gemini Man.
I believe it was the cheaper availability of chroma key.
Yeah. It's super easy to do invisibility effects.
Rick Carter also mentioned the Prometheus episode of the Hulk. But the Hulk was well represented
when he gets trapped like in between forms.
Not to be confused with Rob's favorite Star Trek episode, The Alternative Factor. And Rob, no reaction to that, huh?
Well, I don't know why you would say that.
Okay. He also, now this is interesting. This is worthy of discussion. He also said he thinks we missed the mark by not including the Man from Atlantis pilot.
Getting down into the lung stem. Now I can see.
Elizabeth?
Call an ambulance.
Elizabeth, what is it?
If I told you, you wouldn't believe it. Just call an ambulance.
Look, if you've got a theory, let's have it.
The man is dying. I know how to save him. Now, get those lights off and get the tubes out of him.
We can't just release him to you.
It's 12 feet to that door. Either you're going to help me get him out of here, or I'm going to do it myself.
Doctor, we can't just let him go.
Well, Doctor, I'm taking him.
With Patrick
Duffy.
What?
Maybe not wrong, except that it was, I actually remember that, but I don't know that it necessarily made an impression in the way that other stuff did. It just, I don't know.
The only impression it made on me was in swimming class that summer.
You try
to swim like him? How do you do that?
Yeah. You know what, though? The thing about that is the pilot might have been interesting, but again, it's not
I've
it was one of these.
Recently, in the past few months.
Really?
Man, it's deliberate paced.
Deliberate,
Yeah.
as they say.
That's a polite word for it.
Slow as
shit.
Yeah. Okay, and then he also Rick also mentioned he thought that we should have included because a $6 Million Man was fairly well represented thanks to its advocate and both Ashley and Rob, who had $6 Million Man episodes they championed, was Jamie Summers' debut in the $6 Million Man,
right?
Which was the introduction of the Bionic Woman. We had the Bionic Dog, but we didn't have the Bionic Woman as part of our list. Any thoughts about that?
Well, the thoughts are that episode would have been fine if there hadn't been a Bionic Woman TV series after it.
That's right.
Because everything is erased from that episode because she dies in it.
Yeah.
So you can't really put that in there because there's a whole TV series that makes everything a lie.
Well, I don't know if it's a lie.
Everything is a lie.
Everything's a lie. It's just that it's not emotionally relevant in the way that it is in the $6 Million Man. So it's a good $6 Million Man episode,
Absolutely.
but it's not about the Bionic Woman in that episode.
Right.
It's about him. And I think we did kind of talk and we were talking about like the $6 Million Man episodes, like Secret of Bigfoot. I do believe we brought up the fact that Bigfoot and all of that stuff came back in the Bionic Woman, and how those shows like interconnected in kind of cool ways.
And lest we forget that the secret of Bigfoot is that he's a woman.
Yeah, just a very tall woman, robot.
That's the secret of Bigfoot. Okay.
Victoria's Secret of Bigfoot.
I mean, I of course, those movies. I mean, the introduction of Jamie Summers was a huge deal at the time, and they were some of the better episodes. But I was actually I thought our picks on $6 Million Man were quite good, given that the show, in retrospect, in our memory, is so superior to its actual execution.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Alliance WTTC. Now this is a big look. This is very legitimate. I think we got taken to the woodshed a little for Babylon 5 not being better represented. Alliance
I think
WTTC
it's Babylon 5's fault,
says,
but that's just me.
the Babylon Squared trilogy. I know other people had said World Without End. I think there were a couple episodes that people had pointed out that were notable by their omission from our list. It was represented by Severed Dreams, and a fine episode of Babylon 5 that is. Any thoughts about Babylon 5's place in our countdown?
I'm not really sad or embarrassed that Babylon 5 never really made it into my psyche, and so I will not be shamed into not putting it more on our list. Because it just never hit me, and that's just my personal preference.
You won't be shamed, numbered, stamped.
That's right. Stamped, spindled, mutilated,
spanked.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Babylon 5, but I think what people forget about Babylon 5 is it was a serialized ongoing story. So in my mind, when someone says, okay, the Babylon Squared, that whole trilogy, well, to me, the whole show is kind of one long story.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for me to. Severed Dreams was something it always stuck with me because I was like, I didn't expect that to happen, with the Earth forces fighting against themselves. And I remember that because the idea of revolution and your own side suddenly being at odds with one another was something that stuck with me, especially when you're dealing with something like, the Shadow War and you've got Vorlons and the Minbari. But I Severed Dreams and the title stuck with me too.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny. You'll be shocked to know that I actually took this list fairly seriously, unlike which I do not take seriously. But no, I'm kidding. But I took this list fairly seriously, and so when we decided on Severed Dreams, I actually went back and watched a bunch of Babylon 5s because I wanted to make sure that was the right choice.
Right.
And I have to say it was because some of the other episodes I remember at the time thinking were so freaking great didn't really hold up as well as I thought. I mean, was it World Without End where the Times Squared stuff, which he's saying we missed the boat on. I don't feel we missed the boat on, but there was the episode where they finally confront the shadows and the Vorlons, and I remember thinking that whole thing when the Centauri Ambassador is on Centauri, and he thinks that he's rid it of any shadow influences and that they're going to be safe. And suddenly he realized he was the shadow. I'm like, oh, that was really great. When we watch that, it's going to be amazing. And I rewatched it, and I'm like, this is not 101 material. And it has that thing where Stephen First has that little moment where he said, I swore that I would, have your head on a pike and wave goodbye to you. And there's this little, in the middle of all this superheated operatic stuff, it's that like Joe Straczynski weird fanboy humor where he's like doing this little wave to the head on the pike. And it's like, oh, that stuff so takes me out of the episode. And there's so much I love about that show and admire about that show. But here, I'm just looking for while we talk, because I did, like I said, I actually went back and watched a ton of stuff because I felt like I wanted to take this thing seriously. Here it is. It's Into the Fire. That was the episode. I'm sorry, Into the Fire, which again, I remember years ago, Rob and I had that on a list of best sci-fi of whatever year it came out, and remembered. So I was looking at all these Babylon 5 episodes, and I was like, Severed Dreams definitely stood, above. But I get what Rob's saying, which is true, that it's one like novel for television. So I think it was, I don't think we missed the boat too much on that. I will say we did miss the boat on this next one. Patrick Macias was shocked that we didn't have Cosmic Whiz Kid on our list from Buck Rogers. And I have to admit that, we did get we got 33 from Battlestar Galactica, shockingly defeated City on the Edge of Forever. But it could have really been a three-way tie with Cosmic Whiz Kid because, of course, Gary Coleman is so great in that episode of Buck Rogers.
Mark, you keep saying take this list very seriously, and then you come up with something like this.
Yeah, I know. I have to say, I do. This is not the one which is the recap with the clips. This is the one with Ray Walston as the villain, who is going to try and kill Hieronymus Fox.
He was Boothby, right?
Yeah,
yes,
he's a badass in Cosmic Whiz Kid.
I have to tell you, like, look, I get why people dig that. I dig that, but there was something about the Gary Coleman of it all and Buck Rogers, kind of in the wake of our conversation.
The only problem
with Aaron
with
Gray just kind of made me go, well.
The only problem with it is that it's called Cosmic Whiz Kid.
Now, if it had been called Cosmic Cheese Whiz,
well, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. And I would say, like, today when they don't have the titles on the episodes anymore, it's okay, but it had it in giant, like 60-point type, as we now know, extended. So, and it said the Cosmic Whiz Kid. So I think that's a fun episode. I think Buck Rogers was perfectly represented in Flight of the War Witch and Awakening. Yeah. I think any more than that would have probably been too much, but then
would have taken down the seriousness of our list.
But, at CBS, Spock did say he was disappointed that we did not have Space Vampire and Return of the Fighting 69th from Buck Rogers on our list.
I've come for you. I'll kill them all to hear you.
No! A space-age vampire stalks a lonely space station, and Buck must race to prevent Wilma from joining the ranks of the undead.
You stand between me and something I want.
You were attacked by corpses.
Something or someone is draining their souls.
It felt so
You know what? Those would have been worthy choices too. But I think part of this exercise was not that we were going to try to capture every single episode that we liked of a thing.
Right.
I think it was like in and of itself, is it something that stuck with us? And B, is there maybe something about the show that stuck with us and there is an episode or two that really represents it for us individually? So it's not about like, are we doing an exhaustive fucking catalog? Like, look, I love Space Vampire and, but we don't have to have it on there, to talk about it or to honor it. In some ways, it's Awakening does that for us, right?
I don't know. I still think Awakening and Flight of the War Witch are much better episodes.
Oh, I
Space
agree.
Vampire is basically Dracula in space.
And when Aaron Gray grabbed my hand and said, it felt so good to me directly. I don't need to watch Cosmic Vampire ever again.
Ever again.
And that was exactly like when I was telling the story about Rob and I at Comic-Con, where Lee Merriweather came up to us and said, "I am for you." You know,
that was the greatest thing ever.
Changed your life.
That's what I said. It was the greatest thing ever. So I get it.
She still
Darren.
looks good.
She looked great, and that was, and she had a great sense of humor about it.
Yeah,
unlike Clint Howard. Okay, so Jay wants to give the nod to the War of the Worlds miniseries from the 80s. I'm not sure if he's mistaking this with the series that debuted concurrently with Next Generation, which of course was the War of the Worlds series for first run syndication.
He's thinking about tripods.
He's thinking about tripods.
He's thinking about the BBC tripods, mistaking it for War of the Worlds,
which was much better than the War of the Worlds TV series.
Yes.
And then, of course, there was a more recent War of the Worlds for Epix, which I have not seen.
I haven't seen it either. I hear it's interesting.
Yeah. Let's see. Peter Holmstrom, our production coordinator and a super fan, has a couple of good suggestions. He was disappointed that the Night Stalker was not represented. I think we're all big fans of Dan Curtis's The Night Stalker.
Yep.
I would agree. I would agree.
That was an omission.
Introduce myself. My name is Kolchak of the Daily Chronicle.
Kolchak reports the bizarre, the supernatural, the unexplainable.
You again in another crazy story. This nut thinks he is a vampire.
You know what I call that? Irresponsible yellow journalism.
He has killed 4, maybe 5 women. I saw that so-called super killer wipe up the streets with your so-called police force.
They don't want any help from amateur bloodhounds like you.
I've been a reporter for 22 years.
I've been a police officer for 30.
Well, then why don't you retire?
Each man in the field is issued one of these, and one of these.
Are you suggesting that we pound one of these into Skorzeny's chest?
No, into his heart.
Darren McGavin, the Night Stalker.
I thought about it, but we intentionally titled the show Sci-Fi and Fantasy. And to me, this is horror. So I felt like it didn't necessarily deserve to go on the sci-fi and fantasy list. But I think we would all agree that we love the Night Stalker and we love Darren McGavin. And in fact, I think Tom Vitale actually surprisingly had the Night Stalker, but as an episode of that. And what was it that he had here? I'm trying to keep track of all these lists.
Of course, the series name was actually Kolchak, the Night Stalker. So
thank you so much for correcting me. Okay, so where is? Oh, so yeah, Tom Vitale said that he would. He actually had a. Where the hell is this? Now it's gone. Okay. I can't believe I'm going through all this trouble to find the Night Stalker. Okay, well, it's not important. So Night Stalker, good one from Peter.
I think absolutely.
Ghost Watch, the BBC's answer to the War of the Worlds. Ghost Watch starred actual popular TV personalities from the time, newscasters and talk show hosts who host a BBC Halloween ghost special where they investigate a haunting in the London suburbs. While it had disclaimer.
I saw that again. I think it was on either Shudder or it was on Amazon Prime. I remember watching it and thinking, "Oh, this is going to be so good." I remember it. It's fine.
So welcome live this Halloween night to the first ever TV Ghost Watch. That's the scene in Foxhill Drive in Northolt. Our outside broadcast units are there. That's the house where it might all happen tonight, or it might not. We shall see. We're going to investigate one of the most baffling and fascinating areas of human experience, the supernatural. Tonight, television is going ghost hunting in an unprecedented scientific experiment where we hope to show you, for the first time, irrefutable proof that ghosts really do exist. I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Lynn Pascoe to give her expert technical advice. Throughout the programme, I'll be taking other expert opinion about the supernatural from both here and America. You'll be telling us your ghost stories. And as our tale unfolds, we'll be taking your calls about just what you're seeing. Well, let's go to the main location of our program, the house in Foxhill Drive. Craig Charles, that well-known ghost hunter, is our reporter. Craig, how are you?
Hi, Michael. Yeah, I'm fine. I've taken the Valium, man. Later on, we're going to be interviewing the medium who tried unsuccessfully to exorcise the house behind me. I wonder who's heard from Elvis lately. However, with me is Pam Early, the mum of the house. Hello, Pam. And she's going to be taking us through the whole spine-tingling story. And after that, you can share with us your own supernatural experience on our very own Halloween switchboard. Over to you, Smithy.
I think the problem is it didn't have Howard K. Smith in it. And if you're going to have real-life celebrities, you need Howard K. Smith. He also mentioned Avatar, The Last Airbender, Siege of the North Part 1 and 2.
Zhao! Don't.
It's my destiny to destroy the moon and the water tribe.
Destroying the moon won't hurt just the water tribe. It will hurt everyone, including you. Without the moon, everything would fall out of balance. You have no idea what kind of chaos that would unleash on the world.
He is right, Zhao. General Iroh, why am I not surprised to discover your treachery?
I'm no traitor, Zhao. The Fire Nation needs the moon too. We all depend on the balance. Whatever you do to that spirit, I'll unleash on you tenfold. Let it go now!
That is not what I would have nominated from Avatar. Look, I think Avatar or Legend of Korra would have been very worthy mentions as animated series that fit into what we're talking about. I mean, look, at its height, what many people don't understand about The Legend of Korra is that it got more viewers per week than Game of Thrones. Okay, wrap your head around that. And the thing that was strange about it for Nickelodeon was that it was all like adult audience. It wasn't really kid audience, but those shows were enormously popular. I would actually say that the finale of Avatar: The Last Airbender would have been my pick. Because I think it summed up everything that was great about that.
It's funny you say that because his next pick is The Legend of Korra, Venom of the Red Lotus, the season 3 finale of the fantastic sequel series to Avatar.
Yes.
And he says, in the era of cancel culture and films that seem to promote the idea of just kill your enemy and all your problems go away, Avatar and Korra stand tall in advocating the notion that there are no villains, only antagonists. Where have I heard that before, Rob Burnett?
Yeah. And that's a terrific episode. I'm actually stunned that I myself did not suggest it because I think that's a terrific pick.
It doesn't matter. None of these ideas will work. The second Zahir realizes we're up to something, he'll wipe out the airbenders.
And Opal is one of those airbenders. Believe me, I understand what's at stake.
Then I think you'll agree. The only plan that will work is for me to give myself up.
What? Korra, no.
We'll figure out another way.
I talked it over with Lord Zuko, and I've given it a lot of thought. I have to do this.
You can't expect us to sit by and just let Zahir take you.
The world has been out of balance for far too long. It needs the Air Nation back again. I can't let Zahir destroy it and everyone we love. Help me save the Airbenders. Then you can worry about saving me.
We're with you, Korra.
Yes, whatever you need. We're here.
I'll go radio Zahir.
You know what, though? If we went down the animation rabbit hole, I mean, Batman, the animated series would have, I think we would have had so many more. Way more. You know what we should do? Shows. I mean, there should be an animated version, but we just don't watch animation.
Well, I think that maybe on your show Cartoon Barroom, which will be premiering later this year, you might want to consider doing an animation list because I do think that, as I learned in publishing when I was back in my publishing days, people love lists. Because they love to compare what they would put on the list. So if we've seen anything from these holiday specials we do every year, people love lists.
I would be remiss to not mention, Mark, that you're still in publishing, as evidenced by Nobody Does It Better, which I was recently reading the other day.
Thank you for pointing that out, Rob Burnett.
And let's see, Buffy, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer book you wrote, the 2-volume books on.
So Say We All.
So Say We All. Just
the oral history of Battlestar Galactica.
Since you haven't thrown out a plug yet. man. I figured I'd do it for you.
I appreciate that. I must say to our audience, I was gratified by seeing all the people who purchased one of my books for the holidays, and thank you. I'm glad that you would do that, and I hope you enjoyed them. Okay, that would be the 5th Year Mission, Volume 1 and 2. So Say We All, about Battlestar Galactica, and of course, most recently, Nobody Does It Better, a complete oral history of the James Bond films. Okay, so wrapping up Peter's picks, speaking of animation, he also had a Clone Wars pick. We had the Clone Wars was represented several times on our list. He picked the Mortis trilogy. He said season 3 was a landmark change in tone and quality for the Clone Wars as it transitioned from standalone adventure stories to more mature themes and character development. The Mortis trilogy examines the deeper, more philosophical elements of the Force, as well as the prophecy of the Chosen One and how fragile that balance can be. So that's a good pick. And then the last rounding out Peter's picks are the Outcast, which I don't think we would have had in our 101. I think there were better episodes of Next Generation. He says, but this is interesting because clearly the Outcast was one of Star Trek's first attempts to deal with sort of trans and gay issues, which is something that they really tiptoed around in the 90s. Sure. Obviously, it was a very different time. So he says, when plenty of people today or at the time might have issues with this episode, I cite this as being a major influence in my own perspective on the need for tolerance and acceptance of people's differences and the dangers that can occur if you don't Star Trek at its best. Okay, well, that's one opinion. Doesn't happen to be ours. But it's a good episode. It's a good episode, and Frakes is quite good in it. This is where he falls in love with an alien who has no gender, if I recall.
Right. Yes.
We have not injured you in any way. And yet we are scorned and attacked. And all because we are different. What we do is no different from what you do. We talk and laugh. We talk about our families, and we worry about the future. And we cry with each other when things seem hopeless. All of the loving things that you do with each other, that is what we do. What right do you have to punish us? What right do you have to change us? What makes you think you can dictate how people love each other?
Right. Okay. Fascinating. Okay. And his last pick would be from Millennium, also represented our Countdown once. He had Lamentation. Underappreciated show. Frank Black, played by Lance Henriksen, has spent a life delving into the darkness of criminals and serial killers, but here for the first time, he's confronted by an evil that is even purer than that, terrifying stuff.
On an all-new Millennium, Frank Black has pursued the darkest evil.
It knows you, Frank.
But Friday...
Oh, my God.
Evil...
Who are you?
...finds him. An all-new Millennium.
Who is in my house?
Friday at 9/8 Central on Fox. Parental discretion advised.
You know what? I kind of agree, except that I mean, actually, I do agree. I think that's a great episode. But if I were going to nominate another episode of Millennium, I also would have gone down the Darren Morgan rabbit hole again and nominated Jose Chung's Doomsday Defense.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I think both of those episodes that we picked, somehow someone got behind me,
mm-hmm.
and then Jose Chung's. Those were atypical episodes. I think Millennium is a show that it couldn't decide what it wanted to be in its 3 seasons. They kept kind of changing the premise. But the first season, when he was dealing with serial killers, I mean, it was really like, it was almost like Manhunter or Red Dragon, the series. That's kind of how it started, with FBI profiling. And I thought it was really, really good. And when they finally got to the Millennium, the show really screwed the pooch. It was like, we don't know where we're going to go now. So it's going to be like 4 dudes.
I think it was tough. People forget how hugely popular X-Files was at the time.
Right.
And so this was first and foremost an X-Files spinoff, which was a blessing and a curse, and much more successful than the Lone Gunman series, which followed it, and then Harsh Realm, which was not a spinoff, but in the world of the Chris Carter-verse.
Right.
And but Millennium, it had a trouble really locking into what it was going to be, but it was sort of anchored by this really interesting laconic performance by Lance Henriksen.
So good.
Okay. Well, one of the most prepared guests we've ever had who joined us for our Galaxy Quest show was Steve Melching. And
is it going to be a Steve Melching? Whenever you say prepared, I think that.
I'm surprised that the Fires of Uranus from the Galaxy Quest TV series is not on his list. But what is on his list is his number one, and this is again, this was given to us before our final episode aired. So he had the same pick, 33 from Battlestar Galactica. He said, after a slow start from the miniseries, the first regular episode of the 2004 series showed what the series is capable of, telling gritty, intense stories with challenging characters and morally complex themes. And I'm sure Steve watched it at least 3 or 4 times again to write that sentence.
Yes, he did.
Good. Well, he can stay on 4:30 movie now.
He also picked another episode that was on our list. It shows how simpatico we are with Steve,
right.
Of course, because Deep Space Nine, The Visitor, which was on our list, written by Michael Taylor. And he also had one of our top 10 picks, Twin Peaks, The Pilot, Northwest Passage. Horror sci-fi, grounded in rich melodrama and character humor that brought truly cinematic storytelling to television for the first time. So, and Steve, to his credit, actually puts the writers, each one, he put the writers down, and not just the list of the episode, which you would think we would have done, but to his credit, written by David Lynch and Mark Frost. The X-Files, he had Jose, almost going for a complete matching of our top 10. Jose Chung's From Outer Space, written by Darren Morgan. Brilliant standalone episode that simultaneously follows and deconstructs the show's formula while telling a touching character story. Of course, it's Charles Nelson Riley. How could it not be touching? Okay, and then where he finally separates from the pack is with his final pick, Cosmos, A Personal Voyage, Shores of the Cosmic Ocean, written by Carl Sagan, Steve Soder, and Ann Druin. Not science fiction, but science fact. This episode proves the documentary television can be as riveting, profound, and moving as our drama.
I love Cosmos. It doesn't belong on our list.
I completely agree. I completely agree. Now, that brings us to one of our favorite guests. What can you say about this guy? He's enthusiastic. And man, is he enthusiastic. He's a fan of the Kelvin universe. He's pretty much a fan of everything. And
we're Scott Mantz. This is Scott Mantz.
We're honored to call him a friend. He's been a film critic for Access Hollywood.
We're fans.
He is he's the movie Mantz. He is a huge fan of both the Beatles and Star Trek. And he gave us our list, and this should be interesting. So would anyone like to guess what's number one on his list?
Would it be Metamorphosis? Yes.
You are correct. Number two, also represented, this was represented on our list, the Battlestar Galactica episode War of the Gods.
Yes.
Countably. So number three, also represented.
Patrick
McNee. Or starring Patrick McNee. So I'm glad we were able to resolve that for you in case you're ever in polite conversation with a network executive.
Or Patrick McNee.
Well, that'd be difficult.
That would be difficult, but still, if I were like doing a seance, right, and I think I'm going to get the voice of
Patrick McNee there? No answer.
Can I speak to Diana Rigg, please? Okay. He also had on the list, our list, The Prisoner, Many Happy Returns, which we all agreed was a great episode of The Prisoner to be on our list. And again, it was hard only having one episode of The Prisoner because, of course, I think that's a series that we all love.
Yes, but there is only 17 episodes.
Yeah. Okay, and now Buck Rogers makes its triumphant return. The Plot to Kill a City.
Must discover what final retribution the assassins are planning against the Directorate.
Now.
We're gonna teach the Earth people a lesson.
How?
The total destruction of the Terran capital.
Entire hangar is going up in 5 minutes.
I believe this was the episode with Frank Gorshin. Unlike Steve Melching, he did not provide his insightful analysis and plot synopsis. So I will have to go by memory. I do believe that was Frank Gorshin, who wanted revenge against Dr. Hewer and was plotting to
kill
destroy
a city. Riddle me this, Buck.
I am obviously a fan of the original Buck Rogers. I don't see this in our top 101, but I'm not surprised that Scott did. Okay. And Scott finishes his top 5, which is a great pick. Doctor Who, The Caves of Androsiani. Yeah.
Androsiani.
Yeah. You want to say something about that,
That's
Darren?
Italian.
It's fragile.
It's Macnee.
It's Macnee.
Macnee. It's Macnee.
It's Macnee and cheese.
Perry, I see Professor Jackage newest stuff. Good old Jackage.
Jackage, you got the bat's milk?
Contains an anti-vesicant, I imagine. Interesting.
Where is it?
What?
The bat's milk.
Finished. Only enough for you.
There must be something I can do. Tell me.
Too late, Perry. Going soon. It's time to say goodbye.
Don't give up. You can't leave me now.
I might regenerate. I don't know.
Where is it?
Feels different this time.
Like all of of Doctor Who, especially from that time period, it's very long, and the stories are interesting, and there are great moments from them. They aren't memorable to me. I remember all of Doctor Who from 1974 through 80 as one big episode. So if anything of Doctor Who of that time period would be put in, I would put Robot, which was the first episode with Tom Baker, because it's really good and it's really fun and it's really memorable.
Look, I think a few people had mentioned that we missed the boat on Doctor Who. I know we missed the boat. I mean, there's so many great Doctor Who episodes. I mean, I think there were some David Tennant episodes in addition to Blink that we could have had. I mean, Blink was certainly the one to have, but I mean, Love and Monsters was a really good episode. Rose, which introduced her as a companion. There's also the Tom Baker episode, The Seeds of Doom, which was sort of like a Day of the Triffids kind of thing, which was pretty cool. And then The Runaway Bride, which introduced Catherine Tate, which is also super fun. So, I mean, there's definitely episodes, but I mean, to me, Blink was a no-brainer. I think Rob nominated that. But you could go down a very deep rabbit hole with Doctor Who.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't be able to come up with a complete 101 episodes of Doctor Who that people would be happy with.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
or Star Trek, for that matter.
Yeah. Paul Salamoff brings you the 101 greatest episodes of Doctor Who. Thank you. We'll see you next week. Okay, now that brings us to Mike Sussman. He's going to go very quickly because Mike Sussman, who will be on an upcoming episode talking about the Star Trek spinoffs we want to see, and of course was here to do Star Trek: The Motion Picture commentary last year for the 40th anniversary, and also on our Voyager episode where we talked about the Borg. All his picks were on our list. Again, this list was prior to hearing our list. His lists include number 1, City on the Edge of Forever. Number 2, Battlestar Galactica 2004, 33. Number 3 was Doctor Who, Blink. Number 4 was The X-Files, Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, also on our list. And finally, number 5, also on our list, The Mandalorian, Chapter 9, The Marshal. So all of Mike's episodes were represented on our list. Clearly very simpatico with Mike. A great guest. We're always happy to have him on the show, and obviously a man of impeccable taste. So, no doubt. Okay, another guest from the show was Roger Thompson. Roger Thompson was part of our Teaching Trek episode. He's a professor of Chunghwa University, where he teaches Star Trek to a bunch of students who have no idea what they're in for. And it was one of our most interesting shows to talk about Star Trek and academia. Roger was a great guest. He teaches the ethics of Star Trek, ethics. Much like John Polito and Miller's Crossing. And these are his picks. Star Trek, This Side of Paradise on our list. Star Trek Where No Man Has Gone Before.
Possible way to get Mitchell off this ship.
If you mean strand Mitchell there, I won't do it. The station is fully automated. There's not a soul on the whole planet. Even the ore ships call only once every 20 years.
Then you have one other choice. Kill Mitchell while you still can.
Get out there.
It is your only other choice. Assuming you make it while you still have time.
Will you try for one moment to feel? At least act like you've got a heart. We're talking about Gary.
The captain of the Valiant probably felt the same way. And he waited too long to make his decision. I think we've both guessed that.
Set course for Delta Vega.
Yeah.
Gary Mitchell. Interesting. I'm not surprised to hear the ethics teacher would pick that because, of course, it's sort of the Nietzsche man and Superman ideal. It's like when he given superpowers, you know, what does he do with them? And nothing good comes of it.
He throws rocks at Jim Kirk. That's right.
And hits on Sally Kellerman.
Yeah. Well, who would?
But good episode. Not a great episode, but obviously we're all indebted to it for getting Star Trek greenlit.
That's right.
Has cool things about it. Now, this is an interesting choice that you would only find on Roger's list. Next Generation. The episode is Ethics. This is the one where Worf becomes a paraplegic,
right?
And they have to conduct a medical procedure, a risky and medical procedure to determine whether or not Worf will ever walk again.
After a devastating injury,
Worf will never regain the use of his legs.
A crippled warrior chooses suicide over life as an invalid.
I want you to help me die.
Can a medical miracle save him?
If he goes into that operation, he could come out a corpse.
Or will he die under the knife?
He's going into cardiac arrest.
On Star Trek, The Next Generation.
Not one of my favorites. What about you guys?
Yeah, it's more
idea
important.
is really good.
It's more important than it is entertaining.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's sort of looking at stem cell research.
It's just give me the right. You know what? It's just one of those things where I think that episodes of television need to be like engaging and entertaining, and I don't mean like in one tone, like hey, it's fun, like. In their own right. I think they need to work as drama first. Messages are great. If you want to give me a message, write it down and send it to me. But if you're going to and having a message with an hour of drama is also great, but it needs to be great drama first. And I don't think ethics is.
It's so funny. The famous Hollywood quote, about message movies is, well, if you want to send a message, call Western Union. But you say that now.
And
nobody knows what
that means.
Universe telegram
Send an
is.
email.
Send me a text. Yeah, I mean it's so funny. Okay, so now also on his list, you're gonna love this from everyone's favorite, Space 1999, Black Sun.
That's interesting.
That's a good episode.
Yeah.
I like Black Sun.
Famously about a black hole, but they called it a black sun.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Kind of cool. Not as cool as that 1979 classic, The Black Hole. No.
Look at the size of that hole.
No, Black Sun is a good first season episode.
It is.
And spooky.
Yeah. It's got a great score too.
Yeah. And well represented on that wonderful 4-disc set of Barry Gray music from the original Space 1999. So there we get a little Space 1999 action. And his last pick is a series that was not represented on the show. I wonder how you guys feel about that. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, The Phantom Strikes.
Next week on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, the eerie return of a ghost ship and its ghost captain. A terrifying journey journey into the beyond.
I want you to kill Captain Crane. What happened? Tell me what's happened. Tell me!
The Phantom Strikes next week on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea here on this channel.
I would say that we didn't. Irwin Allen was woefully not included. Really, I mean, we had a little Lost in Space.
Several
thanks
Lost
to
in
Darren.
Space, yeah.
But no Time Tunnel, no Village of the Giants or Land of the Giants.
Land of the Giants.
No Time Tunnel.
If there was just a Village of the Giants, it might have not.
That's
been
the movie.
dangerous.
That's the movie, though.
We also didn't have any far out space nuts.
That's true. Or
Right.
the Lost Saucer.
Yeah, we didn't have any of that.
No Fantastic Journey.
No.
Animal,
a lot of
Automan.
no Powers of Matthew Starr.
The Phoenix.
Dr. Shrinker.
Right.
He was a man with an evil mind.
He was a
we didn't even
madman
talk
with
about
an
it.
evil mind.
And madman,
we kind of had Lidsville. With
Jose Chung, yes.
No Land of the Lost. Legitimately.
No Land of the Lost.
No. Land of the Lost.
Well, I was going to get to that, but someone I think had Land of the Lost on their list.
No H.R. Puffin stuff.
You could make a case for Land of the Lost. We'll get to that, but Rob, I have to say, reading about Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea reminds me of the year at the Saturn Awards where we met David Hedison and hired him to be in our sadly unrealized Free Enterprise 2. What a lovely man he was.
He was so great. He even had notes, though. Remember, we added
he
a
had
little
3
bit
lines.
We added more to his dialogue.
Did he have a fly head on at the time?
But he was going to do it.
He was going to do it, and it was going to be a pleasure because he hadn't acted in a long time. And to have Felix Leiter in our movie,
I know,
it would have been pretty cool. But he was the one thing I remember is he was just such a charming, classy individual.
What a guy! He was really an amazing guy.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now we talked about. Okay, so now we're going to go back to Tom Vitale's very thoughtful list again. Executive at the Sci-Fi Channel for many years, so he knows his genre and has some very specific picks. One, of course, is this is almost an impossible task to represent the Twilight Zone well. I think we did a pretty good idea. It was on a list a number of times. But his pick for the number 1 Twilight Zone would have been It's a Good Life.
He was a bad man, so I turned him into a jack-in-the-box. A jack-in-the-box that still had his bad face. And you mustn't think bad thoughts about me either, or I'll do the same thing to you. Play some more music.
It's good what you've done to Dan. It's real good.
It was swell. It was just swell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you could make that argument.
Agreed. But that goes back to our statement of we don't necessarily want to have the ones that are on everybody's list.
Right.
Agreed. I mean, that's why I think having Walking Distance was great because it's not something you see on a lot of lists. Whereas, we did have Eye of the Beholder and we didn't have Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, which was interesting.
No.
Particularly given
because honestly, it's not a very good episode.
I know, but I said given the fact that we're all such Shatner aficionados here.
I disagree with that.
Shatner is great, but it's not very good.
But there's a man on the wing of the plane. But here's the thing.
On the wing.
Almost
there's a
that
Muppet
is permeated pulp culture.
Culture too.
Pop culture more than virtually any Twilight Zone. Everyone knows Nightmare on 20,000. And how many times have you gone on a plane and looked out on the wing to make sure there wasn't a man on the wing of the plane?
Every time. Everybody, I gotta say, I'm not making sure there's not. I'm vaguely hoping there is.
And not only that, it was also one of the episodes that was remade for the movie. Those are all, It's a Good Life, and
Nightmare at 20,000.
Kick the Can, and Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. But of course, for that, it was Nightmare 40,000 feet because planes could go higher.
Yeah,
right.
No, that's not true. Okay, so good pick.
20,000 more.
We had. He also has Farscape, which was represented on our list once. His episode, We're So Screwed, Part 2, Hot to Katratzi.
John Crichton.
And partner, what did we miss?
You've taken a great risk coming here. Why shouldn't I just have you seized right now?
Well, maybe this.
What's that?
Plutonium core. Tritium shell. Does that translate?
A fishing ball. Put those down!
Nice threads. You must be the Emperor.
Now, before anybody decides to get clever, you should know I have multiple dead man sensors from every culture on my ship and a few cultures I haven't heard of. My heart stops. We all go boom.
He says, I love your guys' choice of Farscape, but I would argue that We're So Screwed is the best episode of the series. I know that David Kemper and Ben Browder were particularly proud of this episode. It had a manic energy, and Browder was given a lot of freedom to improvise during the filming of this one. It's a great episode. Crichton wears a nuke to a peace negotiation and jumps up and down on a conference table. The fate of the galaxy is in Crichton's hands, and he uses the threat of ultimate destruction to force peace upon two violent and warring sides. The episode has a great peacenik message. It really is wonderful.
I agree with that, and that would have been my pick if I liked Farscape.
Well, I do like Farscape.
Wow.
Farscape. And I think that, that's a totally fine pick. But again, to me, if we're going to represent that show, then I wanted to talk about the thing that I don't think you normally talk about with Farscape. You talk about like the manic energy and how like funny it is and kind of like all that other stuff. But I think when that show is at its best, it really made you feel something in a very visceral way, which is why I didn't pick that episode. But I think that's a worthy pick.
No, it makes me feel I wish we had put A Taste of Armageddon on the list from Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it makes me.
Just a taste.
Just a dab. It's like the chef would like you to have a sample of Armageddon. He's sending it out to the table
and
along
the
with the
sequel
bread.
episode, a dash of Doomsday.
Yeah, the Doomsday Dash.
Tom also has on his list the pilot from Lost.
Mayday!
I've just been through a trauma here, okay?
We've all been through a trauma.
I haven't felt the baby move since yesterday.
Give it a break. I know your type. You saw what that thing did to the pilot.
What makes you think we're any safer here than we are in the jungle?
If you see anything, run.
What is that?
Something else is already transmitted. Her voice is weird.
What's she saying?
What is this? Come here. Freaking it! Come on, bring it! Nothing but I crushed the thing. Go on.
Something's coming.
It's coming towards us, I think. Let it go! Guys, where are we?
One of the best science fiction pilots ever made.
Yep.
Maybe the best of the series. We talked about
How many
Lost.
episodes does he have on his list? He
Yeah,
seems to have a lot of them.
He's supposed to have 5, but he couldn't help himself because he also has. And again, I would quibble with this Frank Herbert's Dune miniseries.
Nope.
Better than the David
No.
Lynch movie. Very successful, incredibly well made.
No,
One of the top
Children
5
of
original.
Dune, yes, but not the Dune.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Dune miniseries
Yeah.
either. And I am a fan of the David Lynch movie.
In the world we live in, self-interest governs all.
This is my legacy to you, son. Greatest wealth in the universe. The never-ending struggle to defend it.
I'm gonna bathe this knife with your blood. I'm having dreams again. Visions. Even when I'm awake. This place is changing me. It's the spice. It's in the air we breathe, in the food we eat. I can't escape it.
But knowing there's a trap is the first step in evading it.
I want him to know that I, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, am the instrument of his family's demise.
Run! Just run!
Yep.
He once again has Doctor Who represented in Genesis of the Daleks. I think a classic Doctor Who episode is warranted, and Tom Baker is the most classic of classic doctors, and this is probably his best arc.
The automated Dalek production line has been started. I gave no such order. Who did? I gave the command. You will perform no function unless ordered by me. You will obey only my commands. The production line is to be halted immediately. You heard my order. Obey!
Now, Darren is just sitting there with his mouth like, I'm not going to say anything. He was our guest. Okay, this is actually a good pick that I could get behind. I'm curious what you guys think. Okay. Blipverts from Max Headroom. Max Headroom was way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
It was a potentially great show, but went over the head of most people. Plot is terrific science fiction adventure television.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I totally agree with that.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what we missed, and it was a short-lived series on ABC based on the popular character from British commercials, I believe. Matt Frewer played Max Headroom. Amanda Pays was.
The lovely Amanda Pays, who is in fact represented on our list in the Bilson and DeMeo Flash.
That's right, and in Corbin Burnson's life. Okay, yes. Interesting. Okay, so good for you, Tom. You found one that we think should be on the list. Also, Orphan Black, Variation Under Domestication. Orphan Black is considered one of the best science fiction series of the last decade. This is probably the best episode for a very strong first season. I have to say, I watched the show religiously.
I don't know if I would go along with that statement.
I he was a network executive. He indulges in hyperbole. I was a big fan of Tatiana Maslany. I really liked the show. I don't remember anything about it.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going to go that route, why not, the pilot of Dollhouse?
Why?
No.
Because it
wasn't good. If anything, I'd make a case for more episodes of Buffy and Angel. I mean, Buffy was represented 3 times on our list, which is about right, with Hush and once and The Body and
there definitely could have been more Angel.
And
Check
Angel, we only had Smile Time.
Yeah. We could have done more than just Smile Time for sure.
Absolutely. Now I'm curious what Ashley says about this next pick. This is from Fringe. The episode The Day We Died. Fringe turned into an excellent science fiction series after they stopped pretending they were a near genre procedural and embraced the genre. The episode is great and was a bit of a turning point for the show.
I think great is a strong word.
Okay. Rob, any thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, I think great. See, here's the thing with these shows is, again, Fringe, I enjoyed Fringe while I was watching it. I thought it was really interesting, but again, it kind of changed its premise every season, but it became really interesting. But after it was all over, it was over for me. I didn't go back and I didn't revisit the episodes. And I think that's really a problem for our modern serialized genre storytelling when they turn into these long stories, is that there's not standalone. You don't sit there and go, "Ooh, I'm going to throw in this one episode." That's why what was it? The Reigns of Castamere, was that the name of the Red Wedding episode?
Yeah.
That's why that episode resonates, is because you can't believe what happened. So you go back and you watch it over and over again, and you think about it. And when we were growing up, these episodic shows, they were standalone shows that you could put in and watch for 50 minutes and enjoy them, and you felt you got a full meal.
Yeah.
Whereas all these modern serialized shows, I don't think they have the rewatchability.
You have to take big bites of them to remember them.
Because there's they don't put a premium on delivering. This is going to be a whole goddamn rant, but I think there is a way to balance serialized storytelling with the kinds of things that we're talking about. But to do that, you have to deliver story problems in those individual episodes that are memorable. Mm-hmm. Story problems that kind of get you from point A to point B, so that as an audience member, as somebody consuming that story, I feel as though I go through a journey and I have resolution at the end of it. Like then I can remember what the problem is. I can remember the thing, like versus all the crap that kind of goes around it. And I think you're right. It's like once you kind of go down that serialized path, it's harder to remember. I mean, the thing that's smart about The Mandalorian is that it is kind of like we talk about it as the $6 million Mandalorian, but it is kind of episodic, yet it also has the serialized elements. But we could talk about individual episodes.
Right.
Yeah. Good point. Great point, actually. But don't worry, he's not done. But I'm going to continue because these are actually some good picks because along the lines of what we're saying, and I think this might have been an omission for us, and I might give him this one. Circle from Land of the Lost. This was actually a very cool story for a kid show, and isn't Land of the Lost a great gateway series for young kids in the sci-fi fandom? Was for us.
I don't know if I would go with Circle.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have gone with Enoch.
Oh yeah, that was the Sleestack, the Sleestack from the future.
Yeah. I believe written by Walter Koenig.
Wow. And he didn't even turn into a giant.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
The Infinite Enoch.
The Infinite Enoch. Exactly. They just Sid and Marty Krofft couldn't figure that one out, so they kept him life size. Okay,
yeah,
and then
just hitting on that again. I think Land of the Lost was especially a good show in its time frame because it didn't have to be a good show,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet at points it was extremely well done. So
and there are so many connections to Star Trek when you look at it.
Yeah,
David Gerrold, DC Fontana,
Herman Zimmerman.
Herman Zimmerman, this direct lineage of Star Trek, which is interesting. Because a lot of them worked throughout the 70s, and there's not a ton, that you would say holds up, compared to their Star Trek work.
Right.
Obviously, David Gerrold had, as a novelist, did some great work, but none of the TV really holds up. And for DC, she ran Fantastic Journey. Which was not a particularly great show, although she did some good work on Logan's Run, which we also neglected to mention in our countdown.
There is one episode neglected to mention.
I do think that there was one episode of the Logan's Run TV series, which was the Man Out of Time, which is a pretty good episode, but I'm grading on a curve because it is Logan's Run, the TV series.
Well, I mean, if I were to expand the range of stuff that I would pick from, I would include episodes of Shazam and ISIS.
Yeah.
But I'm not because they don't belong on this.
Yeah. Okay.
And yet,
So he also mentions that we picked some great X-Files episodes, which we obviously X-Files was represented a number of times on our list. He said he feels we missed Home, The Host, Squeeze.
Remember the house your parents warned you to stay away from? This Friday.
Oh my God.
You'll understand why.
This is our home. And this is the way it's gonna stay.
Brand new X-Files. Friday.
And
Home, because it's graphic, people remember it. It is not a great episode of that show.
Yeah.
People remember because it's got a cannibal family.
Yeah.
So what? There's so many better
Who
episodes.
doesn't have a cannibal family?
Yeah, I am not.
I remember the Kenner action figures of the Cannibal Family. They were pretty good.
They had didn't they go on tour as like a singing group?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom also mentions he was surprised during our holiday special that we missed the classic Mork and Mindy episode. It's a wonderful Mork.
You know what? I have to say, I was this close to nominating some Mork and Mindy. And then my sanity returned.
Ha.
So
I would only pick episodes from when Mork knew the guys at the deli.
Well, he also pointed out, and we did represent the Planet of the Apes TV series with The Trap. His pick would have been the pilot, Escape from Tomorrow. I think The Trap's a better episode.
I agree.
Yeah, and of course, all those few Planet of the Apes episodes were turned into telefilms that famously aired syndication on things like the 4:30 movie, like and the best thing they had going for them with those great titles, Treachery and Greed on the Planet of the Apes. And what were the other titles of those Planet of the Apes telefilms?
Life and Pursuit on the Planet of the Apes.
No, Life, Liberty, and Pursuit.
Life, Liberty, and
on
Pursuit
the Planet
on the Planet of the
Apes.
Apes. Right.
I mean, those were great. I mean, the titles were great. The episodes not so good. But that's what they used to do with these short-lived TV shows in the 70s, and they turned them into these TV movies. Galactica famously did that too, and they even added some footage and then to some of them to pad them out. But that's where kind
of like this episode.
Yeah,
kind of like this, which brings me to an episode. Rob will have an opinion about this.
Oh, here it goes.
The episode is Nuke from the TV show Lex.
These visitors mean the end of our way of life.
I'm concerned about you, Brother Randor. You're highly agitated.
Nuke has never had visitors since the landing. Visitors are change. These are truly terrible circumstances. Brothers.
Such a wacky episode, and wacky and misunderstood and underrated series. Had a huge rating for Sci-Fi. This was the Space Monks episode.
I did catch up with my Lex, and it's Canadian, German, whatever it is.
It's German. It's like, look, I kind of had. I don't know if I can.
Sure, you can.
Yeah, I kind of liked Lex, but it's like, but I don't remember anything about it other than it was freaking weird. You know what I'm saying?
It was a very weird show, and look, I enjoyed watching it when I watched it, but ultimately,
it falls into the same category for me as the 1973 show The Star Lost.
Ooh,
yeah,
because it may have some interesting ideas in it, but it's so weird to look at and so odd and so unappealing that it sort of falls off to the side for me.
That does remind me, though, I'm going to file away a little note that for if we ever get to do another goddamn Starship Smackdown, the Lex is a pretty powerful show.
I believe that our audience members mentioned it several times, and we just
have they? We just kind of ignore them. Is that the deal?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was really happy, I have to say, when Boston Rob stabbed Lex in the back. I preferred that was my favorite episode. Oh wait, we're not talking about Survivor? Okay, because there was a Lex. Remember Lex from Survivor? Yeah. Okay. We talked about Kenneth Johnson and V. He had another popular show on Fox. This was Alien Nation, and Tom suggests The Game was an episode worthy of inclusion.
There's a lot of great Alien Nation episodes, and again, we were remiss, I think, in leaving it out. I guess you don't agree.
No, apparently not. He also mentioned
not showing up on this list doesn't mean that the show wasn't good.
Yeah, that's right. It just means he's not worthy of being in our top 101.
Our very specific list.
Yeah.
Eureka, Founders Day. Eureka was a better series, and people gave it credit for. This was the best episode. Okay, to each their own.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then of course there were a few fans who, well, not a few, there were very few who asked no Discovery of Picard, and the answer would be yes, no Discovery of Picard.
That's correct.
Yes, correct.
And okay, so those were some of the comments from fans and our guests. Guys, what do you think we missed the boat on? Anything you would have, in retrospect, liked to have seen on the list that maybe we didn't include?
I think the list was pretty thorough.
Mm-hmm.
And
I feel
sort
like
of hit on things that we normally don't think about, but
I don't know. It's tough for me to look at 101 great episodes and not have Journey to Babel on there, not have Q-Who on there.
Yeah, but again, as we were talking, it's not the greatest episodes. It's the episodes that are, most memorable to us.
The title of the episode is the 101 greatest episodes ever. That's what it is.
Yeah, but there's the idea of the greatest when you're sitting back and kind of and looking at it with a critical eye, like as a critic, right? And then there's the greatest, like when you're talking to your friends, you're like, that is the greatest thing like I've ever seen.
But that's true because you're grading it on its ability to entertain and enjoy. Now, if part of that is nostalgia, so be it. But
also to stick with you.
Grading it on the ability to fit it into the list.
Well, look, exactly. I'm sure 102 through 150 would be equally interesting.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're about to bring you
another 6 hour, 3 episode.
I realized. No. Oh my God! Just 8 hours, guys. We did 8 hours. Yeah, what do people want? We did 8 hours, and we probably talked about so many more things than that wound up.
8 hours, and they're still sending us lists of stuff that we missed.
And they're still sending us lists. I know. So okay, well, before we wrap
podcast,
before we wrap this up, I know we are a podcast that celebrates the love, but for matter, there is always an equal and opposite anti-matter.
Matter.
Yeah. So I got to ask you, worst episode of sci-fi television ever.
Oh my God. Anything Doctor Who.
Did you say anything Doctor Who?
Anything Doctor Who. Oh,
no, that's not true.
I'm just trying to troll people.
I have to say, I watched Doctor Who a lot in the 70s on PBS. Tom Baker, I was a fan. And the robot dog K9. And, right before I started working on Librarians, obviously that show was very influenced by Doctor Who. So I binged a bunch of Doctor Who, and I hadn't watched it in a long time. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I thought it was super fun.
No, I'm just trolling. I
would say that all 3 seasons of Star Trek Discovery collectively amount to some of the worst science fiction television ever, especially considering the lineage of where it should be and where it actually has wound up.
Ashley, what about you? Where's sci-fi a TV show? TV episode, God. Excuse me.
It's just, I don't know if I can really answer that in an honest way, because the stuff that's really bad, that's truly bad, is the stuff you don't remember. And I want us to think about it in this way. We will have these incredibly passionate conversations about something like Spectre of the Gun, right? Which we'll all argue it's great. It's kind of not. We know that, but at the same time, it's also awesome, and we love it. The stuff that's just boring and freaking mediocre, oh yeah, that happened. To me, that's the stuff that's truly bad.
Yeah. No, it's true, because my pick would probably be, and again, I'm sure the shows are far worse, but these are the things that in my mind stick out as being incredibly painful. And in fact, I know there are episodes that are worse of other shows, but certainly, Night Terrors and Masks to me represent the nadir of awfulness of of shows that I just, and shows I otherwise love. I love The Next Generation, and I think there are a lot of episodes of that show I think are terrific. And I'm sure that I would rather watch Masks and Night Terrors. In fact, I know that I would rather watch Night Terrors and Masks than other things I've aired.
I would rather watch those episodes than Ethics.
Well, since you put it this way, I have to be serious. I make fun of Discovery, but I do think that my beloved Star Trek has one of the worst episodes of television ever made, and that is "And the Children Shall Lead."
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's the original series. I know it's got my boys in it and all that.
Melvin Bella.
It's just one of the most god-awful hours of television ever. It makes the Alternative Factor look like Gone with the Wind.
I can't go there. With I think Alternative Factor is worse in my book.
Ugh, no.
Because at least, And the Children Shall Lead has an interesting ice cream ordering scene.
It shows you how the replicator works. It's important, It's like the 3D printer of the future.
It's all color coded.
But by the Ashley scale of does that episode get included on the list of worst, I would say no, because I remember the little song and I remember Melvin Bella. It's that sticks out in my head. I would argue that Alternative Factor is worse simply because it is harder for me to come up with something truly memorable from it.
Scenes from it.
Oh, yes, the galaxy winks out. That isn't true. I love the Alternative Factor. I love it.
I don't agree with you on your love for it, but I do agree with you that there are worse episodes. I mean, I think the lost finale potentially, I would say, is worse than.
Which I still don't know what happened in it.
And to be absolutely equal and fair, I think there are several Space 1999 episodes that belong on the worst of all time list. So, can't remember.
And look, guys, everything in Buck Rogers was gold.
Right.
Happy birthday, Buck.
You know what? You know what? It's funny you say that. I don't remember the title, but the second season episode with the little people where they invade the Searcher.
Off think. I do remember that.
That is probably one of the worst. Whereas Space Rockers is just a terrible episode.
You mean not the one where Mark Leonard removes his head?
No, that's genius compared to the midget.
The little album cover.
Then the little people invading the Searcher. That is so awful. It's
How about
so
Deep
awful.
Space Nine, move along home.
Oof,
there is an attempt by some fans, I think, recently to redeem the reputation of Move Along Home. Apparently, they've not seen the episode; they just like the title or something, because that episode is horrendous.
It's awful.
It's
really awful.
I would like to have those fans move along home.
You talk to anybody who worked on that show, and they all are like that and Meridian. Remember Meridian, where they did Brigadoon? And I love Dax and Terry Farrell, but man, was that bad.
By the way, they did a really good job making fun of Move Along Home at the very end of the credits in the Deep Space Nine documentary.
Oh, did they?
I
think I vaguely remember that. Oh yeah, I do. Oh yes, yeah, that's right. That's so funny. Yeah, we could probably do 101 terrible episodes, but why?
Yeah, that's just stirring up a lot of things that we don't want to remember.
No, exactly. Although it's funny because, like I said, it's a fine line between Spock's brain, which is dismissed as this terrible episode, which is wildly entertaining but bad. Something can be bad and entertaining.
Yeah.
And again, I use the Buck Rogers analogy. The one with the little people in second season is unwatchable, where Space Rockers is awful, but it's great. Jerry Orbach as this evil space promoter. He's like the John Landau. I guess more accurately, he would be what was the colonel for the with Elvis Presley?
Colonel Parker.
Colonel Parker. He was the Colonel Parker of the galaxy who was transmitting a secret subliminal signal to control the youth of the galaxy during these space rocker concerts. And that episode is so ridiculous, and so on a show that was always ridiculous, that it was even more quantumly ridiculous.
Yeah.
And yeah. Oh, by the way, another show that I liked quite a bit that we didn't mention was Journeyman with Kevin McKidd.
Mm-hmm.
I thought was really, really good.
Wow, I don't remember that show at all.
And it was sort of quantum leap type. And then also, what's it called? The British Life on Mars and the American Life on Mars.
Right.
Yep.
We're pretty good shows. But then you get into the whole, procedurals that had a sci-fi element. We don't want to even go there.
Right.
So, okay. Well, listen, here we are in hour 25 of our 101 sci-fi episode countdown. This has been an absolute delight. Not only was it super fun doing this with you guys over the holidays, but seeing the reaction of fans and listeners to our picks.
So now we've devoted over 9 hours.
and it was
turned a little something we thought up on a lark into a colossal waste of time.
But I love the fact that we talked about, look, we talk about Star Trek every week on the show, but that we were able to talk about all these shows that we very rarely not only talk about, think about. There's some stuff on that list. And when you talk about, Incredible Hulk and some of these shows, I mean, there's some really esoteric shows that we delved into. And I mean, Dark Room. I mean, which I was mistaken, by the way. I think I said it was ABC, it was NBC, and it actually is available on their streaming platform on the not on Peacock, but on the NBC streaming app.
And it seems to me, wasn't it also around the same time as a show called Cliffhanger?
Yeah,
oh sure, and Otherworld, and then also, there was a very short-lived show with Vincent Price called Time Express about a time-traveling train.
Yeah,
right. Which was on CBS, and it didn't last very long, fortunately. And
are you ready for the time traveling train?
Well, anyway, this was great. Now that really leaves us in a quagmire because next holiday season, I don't know what we're gonna do.
Well, luckily we have a little time to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say we have 11 months to think about it, but after finishing this podcast, we now have about 3 days.
Yeah, we need to start recording if we're gonna get everything out.
Yeah. Well, guys, this was a grand adventure. I want to give special thanks to Rob Burnett and Ashley for giving so much of their time to go on this walk down memory lane, to ease on down the road as we talked about incessantly the 101 greatest sci-fi episodes ever. I hope you'll join us again next year for whatever we do or later this year. But until then, a very special thanks to Peter Holmstrom, who pulled all the clips for us for this 5-part episode. Zach Raggett's our production associate, our sound engineer, the great Bill Ritter, who I think we pushed to 11 with this one, and he delivered big time. You know, what happened to these little 50-minute shows you used to delivering me? What is this 3-hour thing that you're sending to me to mix? And of course, our producer, Natalie Miscali, and everyone at the Electric Surge Studio. So thank you for that. And if you, after all this, still have more to say about this never-ending countdown, you can always reach us on social media at Inglorious Trek, or Inglorious Treksperts on Instagram or Facebook. But until next week, when we bring you an all-new episode of Inglorious Treksperts, we wish you stay safe, stay healthy, stay at home, and keep on trekking ingloriously, of course. We're waiting for you, Darren. You do that little swish thing.
I just did it.
What,
you didn't hear you.
Can you do it again? Keep on trekking ingloriously, of course. Shh. Engage.
This show is produced by Dean Devlin and Mark A. Altman and is an Electric Surge Network production.